So, another kind of thing about like Western cross promotion with K-pop, we had BTS on the cover of Rolling Stone, but fans were a little upset because they ended up not putting in the individual interviews into the actual issue, and they kind of instead took that space to talk about the K-pop industry in general. And then McDonald's had the BTS meal, but there were no photo cards. A lot of places in the US didn't have the packaging. So it kind of felt like a lot of people were getting kind of ripped off almost with the promise of getting more BTS than they actually did get. So, you know, this is kind of like the uneven side of the clout chasing thing. I think BTS definitely gets it the most because they're the biggest. So what are your thoughts on it, Sid? You're the army here, so
Yeah. I didn't purchase the magazine, but I did see what they were talking about. I do wonder like how much of the actual magazine was like actually just BTS content versus how much was just about the K-pop industry in general. But yeah, I definitely see that overall. Like we were talking about it a little bit earlier, and I agree that I think part of it is just because they want the average American, like non-K-pop fan to be able to pick up, you know, the new edition of Rolling Stone and be able to read it and it not just be, you know, completely devoted to a group that they may not know much about. And instead is more about an industry that they can learn from and is related to music in other ways beyond just the one group itself. But I obviously, like, as an army, as someone who really, well, I'm not a fan of Rolling Stone, but as someone who like really appreciates music and music publications, I definitely like in-depth interviews. Like if you're gonna make them the focus of it, put all of the light on them. Like let me into the artist's mindset and what they're thinking and their art and why they make creative decisions. Like I want to know that. That's the point of like a music magazine, in my opinion, is to let you know things about the artist and let you learn about them from a creative writing form rather than just listening to their music. You get to hear from them. So I do think that the interviews, the personal interviews, should have been included. They had snippets of it in the main article, but obviously like not having the full interviews is like kind of a letdown. But again, like I think it's just because they need to keep doors open for other readers that are just not just army, but in doing that you do alienate the actual fans.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a gamble.
I think oh, sorry. You want to go?
I'm just thinking about it, and you just wonder where Rolling Stone is coming from, how they're thinking about it, because they may not be, when they're writing that for Rolling Stone, they do have a history. They may not be thinking about, we're writing this for the fans. We want to appeal to the fans. They actually might not be thinking about that at all. They may just be like, they're coming to Rolling Stone and we're going to translate it into the way that we would write them. You know what I mean? So it's like really interesting to me because you just don't know what they were thinking. Sometimes that just does happen. Like I've read articles.
Yeah, I think it was. Oh, yeah. You continue.
Yeah, I was just saying I've read articles from artists I like, and I read like I think I read a Rihanna article recently, and I was like, this isn't even an interview. I was shocked. It was like, it was hardly anything at all. It was just mostly photos, and they advertised it as like a very in-depth interview. It's just like you never know what you're gonna get depending on the publication. So yeah, I don't know.
There was a misunderstanding too between fans and Rolling Stone. I don't think it was supposed to be a BTS dedicated issue. I think they were supposed to be the cover star, and I think that the interview should have been on there. It just makes sense. They basically publicized this whole issue based on those individual interviews, and they should have put those in there. But I also think that it wasn't like a dedicated special issue. It was a normal issue of Rolling Stone, and they were the cover. So obviously other things were going to be in there. I just think they should have put more BTS in there. But I definitely think that, you know, it was a normal issue of the magazine and that they were the cover stars, you know? So, like, I think it definitely is a window to open up to talking about K-pop as an industry and how it's affecting our industry and the connections between that. But they should have included the other interviews, because otherwise, like, why would you do those interviews if you're not going to print them in the magazine? It just seems silly to me.
Because of the way they advertised it. I will see the advertisement was very specifically geared towards BTS and solely them.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why people were confused when it was released.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of, you know, like, it would be like if Elle magazine had not just said they're our cover star, Blackpink's our cover star, but it's the Blackpink issue, you know. But they were pretty clear that it was the cover, they had a story about Blackpink, and then it was still the rest of Elle magazine, you know. I think Rolling Stone was being intentionally confusing to get people to line up and buy them en masse.
Interesting.
I don't know, but it could have just been an expectation that I just know that they really went hard on how in depth those interviews were. It just felt weird for them to go so hard on those interviews and not print them. If that's especially if that's your cover star. The whole point of the cover star is to take up some space in the magazine. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, but they definitely should be in there. I do think though some people were just annoyed. It was probably like a lot of BTS poppers who were annoyed that K-pop was included in the whole thing at all. And I think it's a valid conversation to have in the magazine. So I'm not necessarily going to be mad about that. I just think that the individual interviews should have been printed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it was like they had the main article and they used excerpts of the interviews, but they didn't include the interviews themselves.
Yeah, and those full ones should have definitely been in there.
When you were saying that, I do want to make the point that, like, I would like to just read this article because, like, having excerpts of an interview in an entire article and just, like, discussing facets of things, like, that's very typical in a magazine interview. And I've read so many like that before. So I would just like to read it to see how it read, because people were very offended. And I understand why, but I'm just, like, wondering, like, if it was, like, typical or if it was, like, really, like, out of left field. Because I read stuff like that all the time.
It's a good article, or the one article that I read was pretty good. Like, I did read, it was probably, like, 2 pages worth of writing.
Okay.
It seemed like they, you know, were doing their best. There, you know, as in all magazines, there were some things where you were like, why would you say it like that? Or, like, why would you interpret something like that? There were those moments that were like, that's weird. But for the most part, it was okay. Yeah. Like, I don't think they were intending to treat the artist any type of way. There was a weird element where they were like, this is so foreign. And I was like,
sometimes they just say, like, quirky things, and maybe it was the voice of the person that wrote it. I'm not sure. I would like to read it because I'm just like, honestly, we're talking about excerpts of an interview written in an entire article. That's like 50% of celebrity interviews that I've read for magazines.
I will say, Army, you know, Army's crazy. You know, they're like the FBI. So they were pulling up all this pre-released articles from the same writers. And I will say that I was like, strangely, they chose writers that don't generally write too well about BTS, or at least, like, it seems biased. Like, this one of them was like this guy who was like, if you consider Super M is more culturally significant than BTS, because if you, like, take into account their sales of SHINee, NCT, and, like, all of the SM groups that each member comes from, then they're more culturally influential than BTS and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, that is a separate article. I do see why people would be like, why would you get this guy to work on the BTS article, though? But,
yeah.
It's probably because he's the
I
one who
just
knows
think-
about K-pop the most.
Yeah, that was
That
going to say
doesn't
that.
sound
It's probably 'cause
unreasonable to me. I think
he's the only one at Rolling Stone that probably writes about K-pop, so that's
Yeah,
why.
that doesn't
It's
sound-
because
I think this
Yeah.
is a little
Yeah.
bit of the. I don't want to be the bad guy here, but I think it's a little bit of the victim complex. Just a little
No,
bit.
yeah, I think that a lot of fans just wanted BTS. Period. The
And that-
end.
yeah.
I'm a multi, so I like a lot of different groups. I'm not necessarily holding grudges. But again, I do like to hear from each of the boys individually because they have so much individual talent and like their perspectives are very different, that I always think it's interesting to hear about them, especially because they're working on solo work specifically right now
Mhm.
a lot more, that I'm like, I would love to know what they're thinking.
Yeah, those solo interviews definitely should have been in the magazine. They could have spared a couple more pages for them. That just seems silly to not put them in there. It just feels like an incomplete version of the cover story. And I think that's the bigger issue, more so than the main article itself. Like, I think the article is probably fine. I think people were mostly upset that the individual interviews weren't there.
Oh, okay.
But the fact that they were, like, going through this guy's stuff and being like, he's shady and...
Yeah, it's just context is everything, and sometimes I just feel like Twitter kind of does not care about the context of the situation or nuance. Not saying that this guy's in the right. I literally don't know anything about the situation. It's just sometimes like I question, just because like being on Twitter, the context is often like just left out.
Yeah.
You
Also,
know?
cancel culture is so big right now. And it's a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times misleading, especially when you look at the bigger picture of someone's character.
Yeah.
I think once people start really getting outside and getting reintegrated into normal human society, and we're not on Twitter all the time as our like main source of human communication, maybe these kind of like image public executions of cancel culture won't be so interesting to us anymore. At least a little bit, because I felt like during 2020 and this year, early part of this year, cancel culture has almost exponentially gotten bigger and been more of a thing that like people have time to really participate in, you know, like keyword searching someone's Twitter and going through like 5 years of it. I definitely think that's something I've seen on Stan Twitter especially get just out of control big. And it's a little worrisome, but it's definitely a product of the internet and how it works and having 140 characters to express yourself. But also, I think our generation, the younger part of our generation in particular, is not moderate about anything. They're not moderate in their politics. You know, they're either like full on communist or full on like fascist, and then like
so extreme.
And nuance is not a thing, and that's also because they're young. Obviously, nuance is not really a big part of their culture at the moment. I think as zillennials or cuspers or whatever you want to call us, we have a little bit. I know we have a little bit of a different perspective because we're a little older. But I definitely see the younger kids on Twitter being very combative.
Yeah, very, very true. I just would like to say, if any young kids are listening out there.
Oh, this isn't me trying to be like old man yells at cloud. This is just something
I know.
I've observed.
Well, this is me being old man yells at.
Yeah.
No, this isn't even me being old man. This is me being like big sister, which is weird to say because I'm the youngest sibling. But I would like to say sometimes you see things online that lack context, and oftentimes they are the most extreme perspectives because that's what gets the most clicks, views, and engagement. That is not how the real world is all the time. So, you know, don't sometimes I see young girls feel really discouraged and bad about themselves or their skin color or literally anything. They feel so insecure because they see all these like crazy opinions online, and like the world is more nuanced than that. I will say, like, it is not as harsh in a lot of ways as you think. So you can't experience life through, a keyboard and through online. You have to go out there and like feel it, meet different people. Sometimes I feel like they lack that, and they get really, really sad and like really, really down. Not even just girls, just all the young, it's really hard on them these days.
Yeah, I don't think we were meant to see this many opinions at once.
For sure.
Yeah, like, in addition to that, like, I just think you have to, on the internet, if you're on the internet, you have to be able to think for yourself.
Yes.
Don't be a sheep. I hate when people herd like sheep onto like one thing just because someone does take that most extreme perspective, and then everyone interprets that as like truth and then just attack someone else. First of all, stop attacking people on the internet. Unless they're like overtly racist or like just completely something terrible. Maybe you are just misreading the context. Remember, we are writing on keyboards. This is not a person talking to you. You don't know the tone, the context. A lot of people have trouble with tone indicators. So let people explain to you their context. If you think like, whoa, that sounded weird, be like, yo, what did you mean by that? Because it could be completely different from what you think. But if you're like, yo, block, cancel, report so-and-so because blah, like, that's just going to exacerbate a whole issue, okay? Got death threats in my inbox for the first time in the last 2 weeks, and I was blown away. I was like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
we're on the same level, Sid, now. We're both K-pop Twitter menaces.
Like, they were really like, yo, you should go do this, this, and this. And I was like, wow, you know what? That's crazy. I've never gotten
a K-pop Twitter death threat. I have gotten death threats before, but not from K-pop Twitter. But
this was K-pop Twitter. This was solo stans.
Oh my gosh. I got suspended.
Yeah. So like, I'm just saying, it's never that serious, especially when it comes to K-pop. I'm sorry, but like the way some of these kids move online is actually concerning. Like, please touch some grass. Please look someone else in the eye at least once a day and be like, wow, that's a human being. I should treat them like a human being instead of like assuming behind a screen that no one's going to get hurt from the things you say. Like, I just think people don't put stock in their words when they're written out. But when you are forced to read comments and stuff like that, it has an effect, and not a good one. And you can be like, well, I didn't do it. I was just here in my room. If like, you can be held liable for stuff like that too, by the way, online. So just please be careful.
Yeah. She's nice.
Be safe.
You wish death on me. When she told me that, I was like, yeah, honestly, I might have alerted the authorities, because wishing death on someone is very insane. And I'm like kind of paranoid, about the internet. Yeah. It's just weird. Like, people,
but you also never know what someone's going through. Like, you never know.
Man, I got my first internet death threat in middle school. I'm used to this shit.
I'm not. I'm like an internet.
First time
I've been chronically on the internet since 2008, man. I was fighting with people about Sandy Hook and gun control. And they were like, I was like, we shouldn't have guns on everybody. This dude was like, I'm gonna shoot you for that. And I was like, well, that proves my point. Thank you very
much. Absolutely not. Before Twitter, the last time I was on the internet was for real, was Tumblr. And I was on like Dr. Who Tumblr.
Yeah, I was on Tumblr.
I was not Dr. Who didn't. Yes. That was me. Say it. So,
I didn't say anything.
Definitely not
Doctor Who subculture.
Shut up. So I was definitely not on the side of Twitter that was bullying things. I was on the side of Twitter that got bullied, but gladly, I was never bullied. Now they're gonna
I
believe
was
me
on
when we get off this
aesthetic. I was on
call.
aesthetic Tumblr.
Yeah, I was on a different side of Tumblr, a different circle.
Look at them bragging about the side of Tumblr that they reside.
I'm not bragging.
I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to.
Too.
Look, man, I was still on Tumblr. I was still a weird kid, but I was definitely on like
high school in Tumblr. It was all the rage, like sophomore year.
Definitely on like fandom Tumblr. Even that.
Yes, it was.
Only like
Harry
the like
Potter.
the hipster kids and like the Doctor Who kids had Tumblr at this point. But like
Yeah,
if you were
the
like
hipster kids.
yeah, if you were like normal and like social, you didn't have Tumblr.
You didn't
That's
have a
kinda
Tumblr. I was
was normal as fuck out.
Harry
But you were a little
Potter
artsy,
and
let's be
photography
real.
side.
I wore black for like a whole year in Creepers before they were cool.
Yeah.
Not the Creepers. I never even had those. I was definitely
Creepers.
going through the pop punk thing.
I was trying to be grunge, okay? I was really into
Sky Ferreira.
Yeah. I was like, oh my god, it was
you
bad.
were doing Sky Ferreira and I was doing like all the girls that hang around like Mac DeMarco, so I was wearing like windbreakers and shit.
The only thing I wasn't doing was like smoking cigarettes. I was just like, I was just wearing
But guys,
smoking is
let's
bad.
Be safe. Let's be safe on the internet. Let's be kind to other people.
do thumbnail.
Everyone
No,
likes
unless
to
you're a
say
Twice
that.
fan though, some of that out of pocket shit you do is really funny.
I'm dead.
Guys, we should all do hearts for the thumbnail. No?
We don't get to pick the thumbnail, but sure.
Everyone said, what was I gonna say? Basically, just be nice, okay? Everyone always talks about how BTS is all anti-bullying, and then armies get on Twitter and they're like, well, that's BTS, not me. I'm like, damn, y'all, we can't just be nice. So, especially because y'all are scary. I'm a part of you, and I'm still afraid of you guys because you flock. As soon as you interpret something and you decide that's what someone meant, it's over. It's over for you. It's over.
Yeah.
Cut the cameras, it's over.
The cameras.
So,
Yes.
boom.
They start marching.
Little internet safety video included in our video.
I'm so sick of this fake love.
Trumpet. She's so sick of this joke that we keep telling.
Just to be clear, they love that song. Okay,
I do love that song. I'm
but
just
we
saying
also
it would
love
be your
that
battle.
joke.
It would be your battle rally
But
cry.
The joke is funny.
You know, like in the American
guys are
Revolution,
called
they'd have
Army.
a drummer in the back. That would be the person with the speaker playing "Fake Love."
if they're doing drums, we'd definitely be marching to "On." You guys are way off.
You guys are literally called Army. So any armies, why would you ever take offense to that?
Yeah,
Army for a
I
reason.
don't take offense.
Not you.
respect the
Army
core.
multi. Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
It was the wrong hand.
Shit.
Attention!
You're an idiot.
RM reporting for duties.
Just
Cook
stream.
lover six.
Love. What does that even mean?
Stream now.
Girl, who knows? Who knows? Who
Soldiers,
knows?
move out. Soldiers,
You're
move
an
out.
A-tiny. What does
Let's
that mean?
stream.
You're short, Skylar. You're short, so you're an A-teeny.
First of all, I am short, but also I'm barely in 18. I love
Junk
them.
cookie lover
But I
Cloud
would also look
96
at Dan.
reporting for duty, sir.
No, do the streaming battle call. What would that look like?
What, a
they're
streaming
ready-
battle call? Oh
Mhm.
man. It's time to stream.
You guys are embarrassing. Can we move on? What is the next topic?